Impersonations.
So that wasn't on? We weren't taped?
Not yet.
Shit.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Lambs virtual conversation. For those who are not familiar, the Lambs is America's oldest professional theatrical organization. It was founded in New York in 1874. We are a social club for members in the arts. We're also a foundation that supports the arts. It was members of the Lambs who founded such organizations as the Actors Fund, ASCAP, United Artists, Paramount Pictures, Actors Equity, Screen Actors Guild, and the list goes on and on. You can read a more detailed history about the Lambs on our website. And since the last year, it's almost a year now, we've been doing these virtual conversations to keep our club members and our guests active. We're really excited tonight to have Marilyn Michaels join us. I hope all of you catch. Also, what I'll do next, I'm going to introduce our wonderful host, James Gavin, who is an author and a journalist. And James, I'm going to roll it over to you.
Do I have the honor of introducing Marilyn myself, Magda, or would you like to jump?
Well, I'd like to introduce a dear friend, Marilyn Michaels, who I've admired since I was a little girl, and she was a little girl.
Enough. Okay.
No, the two of us were little.
Hello. Hello.
So, about 20 years.
I gave all my good material before we started the taping.
Okay.
Makeup. No, okay. See, the line doesn't work again.
Okay. The credits are too innumerable. You will learn all about her tonight. But James, may I ask you to your microphone a little higher so we could hear you a little better?
What happened? I'm not talking. Did I hear them? What?
No. Okay.
What?
Okay, now it's
something showing. What happened?
No, we just wanted to make sure the microphone is okay. Okay, fine. Now
is the microphone okay?
Here we go.
That's so nice. What
and now on? Our wonderful interviewer, James Gavin.
Yes.
Marilyn,
hello.
How are you?
Hi, not good.
Hello.
Not good. And you're so formal tonight. I thought you were all going to come naked.
What? Up in your honor. I don't do this for just anybody, Marilyn.
What, darling?
Hey, I said I dressed up in your honor. I don't do this for just anybody.
You don't? Oh, I'm so excited. But you were dreamed out. And you did the liner notes, and you wrote wonderful things for my new CD. Let There Be Night. Thank you so much.
And there is so much to talk about in a career that spanned since you were probably a little girl. I would say.
No, I'm not enough with the little girl.
You were a little girl at one time, Marilyn.
At heart.
But Marilyn, yes. This interview does have a hook, and while many of us, not myself or you, have been in lockdown and waiting for something to change, you were busy making an album, making it yourself. Give us a word about that album.
Well, yes, but this thing about the quarantine, it's a terrible thing because, I'm hugless for so long, at least 13 years, so it's really, but I'm kind of used to it because I've been in quarantine. I don't go out very much unless it's 70, 65 degrees. So I'm in quite a bit, and I have to think of things to do. So I did. This actually started before. Can you see it? Can you all see it? I can't see. Okay, it's Let There Be Night, and it's a CD, and I'm very proud of it. Might be my best, James. I know you know better than I do about that. But I started just before this whole thing, this miserable thing happened. And it's really good. I do 32 voices on it. Some people were playing games, trying to guess the voices I do in the last cut, number 16, and see if they could guess who I was doing without looking into the notes, because I do say, it's Lily Tomlin or Patty Lupone or whoever. It's all in there. So they try and guess them. Nobody gets them all. Maybe you do.
I did. But one of the marvelous things about this album is that it shows almost the entire range of what you can do. There are people,
really?
There are,
oh, if you insist. Look, I do comedy. Oh my God.
Discovered you thanks to this album, which I believe is 1965.
Enough. Yes,
And
yes,
there
it
are
is.
people who, like me, first saw you on the Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin and Johnny Carson shows
Yes.
and laughed our asses off listening to you imitate the wonderful quirky personalities of the day with such marvelous hilarity. And
Thank
there
you.
are people who were lucky enough to see you on the national tour of Funny Girl who know how you can act. And what I love about this album is that all of these qualities are there in that album.
Oh,
And we have
thank
so
you.
much to talk about. But was it almost, given your very rich family history, which we will
Mhm.
be getting into quite a bit,
That's a
was
whole other program.
right, was it almost preordained that you would join show business? Was there ever any question that you would be doing this?
Well, no, I was a child performer, like Elizabeth Taylor. I started very young. Actually, I was on stage when I was 2 years old. I went on my mother's act, and you can't follow a kid, a little child who goes on in diapers. And I started to work with her and go on tour as soon as I was like about 7. I told her if she didn't take me on stage, I wasn't going to eat. That's the worst thing you can tell a Jewish mother, that you're not going to eat. So we immediately we started to do concerts in Toronto, Montreal. We're big in Canada, and I would perform on Christmas vacation, Hanukkah, Passover, because they didn't want me to leave school. I have no idea why they didn't want me to leave school. I wasn't very thrilled about staying in school, but that's when wanted me to be normal, have a normal child. It didn't work out that great, but that's when I did my performing, and I just couldn't wait to get out, to fly in and do performances.
Let's start by reminding people that you come from an extraordinary family tree.
You
Your
know
father,
everything.
your father,
You know who knew everything? John Simon. Remember the great critic,
I
John
knew
Simon?
John Simon.
He knew. I mean, I used to tremble. I did a show called Catskills on Broadway. I didn't know. I was just praying that the New York Times and John Simon wouldn't, eviscerate me. And they liked me. They really liked me, and it meant all the world to me. But then we met socially, and he knew almost as much as you do. Go ahead, you're on. Tell them.
Your father was a, 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 a part of the Metropolitan Opera family
Yes.
for decades. He
Yes.
was a member of the Met Chorus, but I've also read that he was the director of the Met Chorus.
Well, he was the senior member. He was like a
Harold
big
Sternberg.
muckamuck there. He was the one who spoke to AGMA, the American Guild of Musical Artists. He was there for 40 some ridiculous amount of time. And then I had an uncle who was also a basso profundo, who also sang, my Uncle Sam, who sang with my dad, and they were the senior members of the chorus. They saw everyone.
But your
They worked
mother,
with everyone.
a grand woman of the Yiddish theater, Friedel
Yes.
Oischer, from whom you learned a great deal.
Oh, yeah. Well, everything.
Beautiful.
Working with mom, she gave me my stage legs. They call it stage legs, and took me on stage with her when I was 7. And they used to call me, I found an old playbill, and they called me Friedel Oischer and her daughter Marilyn, the Wunderkind, which means, wonder child. I thought that was like freaky. It was like a little circus person. When I found out only maybe 20 years ago, the Wonder Child, you know, like a Wonder Child. I was 11 years old, and to me, it was natural to be singing in Hebrew and Yiddish and singing harmonies, singing four-part harmony by myself. Hello, but but they thought it was a big deal, and that's how I was advertised as a
Let's
child.
talk, if we may, let's talk a little bit about your father, Harold Sternberg, because
Yes,
it was through him that you had free run of the Metropolitan Opera for a long time.
Yeah.
I found on my shelf this great recording of Verdi's
Oh my
Macbeth
God.
with
I'm
one
gonna
of those
cry now.
dream.
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry now. You're gonna make me. You're
One
gonna
of
make me cry.
with one
Oh
of
my.
those dream Metropolitan Opera casts. This is 1959. Leonard Warren, Leonie Rieseneck, Jerome Hines, Carlo Bergonzi, and your father
Yes.
playing a small but interesting role
Yes.
of the manservant.
Yes.
Now, he, but he
He
was
practiced 4 months to do that line. You know, he wanted to get it right. Daddy, you're gonna get it right. Take me to the beach, you know?
but
Yeah.
from but from your earliest memories, you were surrounded by opera, weren't you?
Yes, I was. That was my life. My dad would take me to all of the dress rehearsals at the at the old Met. So I was like the Eloise of the Metropolitan Opera, Eloise of the Plaza for our viewers here. I was the Eloise of the Met. I would run around all over the place, and I would take food. They pack sandwiches for me, and I go and sit in orchestra, and I saw all the. I was there at the debut of Joan Sutherland, with the press, sitting in the middle of the press, eating a lox and bagels, and the press, and making noise and opening a Snickers bar. The press hated me. They really get somebody, whose kid is this?
Give us a little sense of what it was like to be in the old Met, surrounded by all this greatness as a little girl.
Well, it was, I would say that it was thrilling, and it was, but for me, it was a way of life, you see. I was there a lot. I would be at the Metropolitan Opera, or I'd be down on Second Avenue. I was always in the theater, and it was okay as long as I didn't have to be in school. I was happy. So I went from Second Avenue and Fourth Street to 39th Street. And I remember at Thanksgiving, there was a great view. I think it was on the second floor of the Thanksgiving Day parade. And my father would take me to the window. Oh, Mark, give me tissue. He would take me to the window, and I would, watch the Thanksgiving Day parade I was like right on top of the parade. Of course, many years later, I was in the parade, but nothing. It was, people like Lily Pons and Roberta Peters, and they were all part of thank you, he's going to make me cry. They were all part of the family, my family. So they made much of me as a little girl. I was not old enough to be competition to them. And every time I found them, they would, jingly, jangly jewelry. They were glamorous. And they spoke, James, and you will understand that they all spoke in the mask. Darling, how are you, Marilyn? Darling, just about to go into into an opera, into a coloratura. They spoke up here. How are you, darling? Oh, you're so pretty. I love you, sweetheart. Darling, yes, yes. Hi, and hello, darling. How are you? It wasn't a normal voice. It was always up there, because that's what they did. They had to keep it up. Hello. Yes.
But
That was my life.
your father sang in many languages. He was
Yes.
obviously a very studied and learned man and a very skilled musician in order to do what he did.
Yes. I was just thinking of this. He was amazing in that, but because of the opera, so he could converse in, in French, of course, Italian. He was fluent to Hebrew, Yiddish, Russian, and he just didn't do Japanese. I remember when I was about 18, the Metropolitan Opera went to Japan. And I said, Daddy, did you eat sushi? He said, no, I ate steak. He didn't know from sushi, But that was fabulous. They used to go on spring tour. Every spring, the Metropolitan Opera goes on tour in the United States, and they go to all the big cities. So while he was on tour, I got my first job on some television, the Hollywood Palace. I was in LA, and our communication, we didn't have cell phones. It was all writing letters, letter writing, the fine art of of letter writing to each other. I've got all those. I've got those letters.
There's
And,
another very interesting bullet point on your father's resume, and that is that he appeared in the ensembles of 2 Gershwin musicals on Broadway.
you know everything. Well, what is it with you?
And
Hello?
And Gershwin liked your father. The shows, by the way, were Let 'Em Eat Cake and Pardon My English.
Oh my God, did he pay you to do this?
But this is obviously you didn't see these shows, but what did he say about Gershwin? Did he reminisce about those shows?
Yeah. Daddy started out in the business. He didn't start out in the Metropolitan Opera. He had a magnificent basso profundo voice. And he started out auditioning for shows. And he got accepted immediately in the Gershwin show. The first, I forgot which one that you would know of the 3 Gershwin shows. My dad was in all 3.
Let 'Em Eat was
Let 'Em Eat Cake.
first, yes.
And
I
George
believe that's the
Gershwin
one, yes.
loved my father. He just loved Harold because of the voice, and he was, and they say in Yiddish he was a Landsmann. He was, they were from the same neighborhood, so to speak. So my dad always asked to get out of performances or rehearsals on the high holy days, and Gershwin let him go. He said, okay. And he used to call my father, and you don't know this, something you don't know, Shaliapin. He called my father Shaliapin. Would you tell everybody who Shaliapin was?
Fyodor Shaliapin was one of the great basses of opera history.
Yes.
Great Russian bass, and that was the highest compliment you could give a bass.
The highest, absolutely. I knew I was going to cry in this thing today. I shouldn't have put all this makeup on. Hello. I've got so much lighting in here. I was ready. They could have done Ben-Hur. Hello. Anyway. Shaliapin, that's what he called my dad, yes.
Was your father satisfied, fulfilled by being an ensemble member? Did he have ambitions to be a leading man?
It's a great question, and I think he was happy in the chorus, and here's why. To be in our business, it's so much more than talent. Talent is only a little tiny piece of it. There's got to be, first of all, you have to have tremendous sensitivity, but you have to have tremendous guts. You've got to have the guts to take it, to get out there, to do it, to do this thing with the lights that I don't know who's looking at me. Hello. You have to do it all. You have to be totally committed 100%, and all the fear you have before you walk on stage. A quick anecdote. My father tells a story, and this is in my book, How Not to Cook for the Rest of Your Life, which a fun book. He was standing, Maria Callas. I love you. I love you. Hello. Amazon, folks. He was standing, Maria Callas was standing next to Daddy, ready to go on stage. And she was at the height of her powers. It was in the late 50s. She was still singing great. I think it was just before Aristotle Onassis did his number on her. And she's standing right next to Daddy. And my father's experience with my mother, Fredel, and with me, and nervousness, he knew how to handle it. And she turned to him and she said, "Oh, Mr. Sternberg, I am so nervous. This little heart is beating so fast." And she was bad. She was terrified. And Daddy he just took her shoulders and he said, "Madam Callas, you're going to be so great. It's going to be great." And he had that wonderful ability to make you feel secure, which is a great talent. But he would get nervous. The nerves would get him. So every time they called and they said, "Mr. Sternberg, we have a role. We want us to," and they wanted to give him another compromario role, right? In the opera. He would suddenly get the flu. You know, he would get sick, and that was something he couldn't overcome that, you know. So that's probably what it was with my father. Yes,
you
he would have been a great, and he had a leading man, the voice and the looks, the whole thing.
So you had on your father's side of the family Broadway and opera, but on your mother's side of the family you had the Yiddish theater.
Yes.
And how to convey the importance of Friedel Oischer in the Yiddish theater when you were a child. She was really one of its grand women.
God, how do I
And
explain my
I
mother?
know
It's,
that she
she was a genius, you know. She was a genius, a pioneer in that field. Or they call it the Jewish Judy Garland, you know, that kind of thing. And the interesting thing is, and my mother sang cantorial music, and she was fantastic. But she had no accent whatsoever. You know, I mean, she spoke, like that. But that was her genre, the Hebrew and Yiddish music. We have an album that I did called The Oischer Heritage, which I produced after mom went, where don't tell me you have that there. Oh, James.
oh, it's right here. The cover is in a frame because you signed it for me,
Oh, James.
but the
And
CD.
yeah, and my uncle Marcia and my mom and I, and we're all singing together. It was yes, it was thrilling. It's just that when you're born into it, and when it is a way of life, you know, I mean, I can't ice skate. You know, I wanted to do like normal things. And when am I going to get the skates? When are you going to get me the skates? When will I go to Wallman Rink and get me the skates so I can skate? And there was no way they were ever going to get me skates because I could fall. And I'm a klutz, you know, it was going to happen. Then I wouldn't be able to perform and whatever. That never, it never, ever happened. And that's what I wanted. As soon as my brother, Michael, was old enough, I think he was, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something, and he said he wanted to go skating, I got him the skates. And I took him to Wallman Rink and he just skated away, you know. But that was the life. You lived a very sheltered, I still live a sheltered life.
But you have always been a New York City girl.
Oh, this is it. I mean, I traveled a lot because I had to. I mean, in order to make money, you have to be on that plane at, 7 in the morning, please, you know, sure. But I don't travel I'm a terrible traveler. Well, I have that all in the book, How Not to Cook for the Rest of Your Life. I've got 2 chapters on the joys of travel. I don't want to give it. Is it a funny book? Is it a funny book?
Your book, I reread a good portion of it today, and I laughed out loud so many times. It's not a formal memoir. It's your reflections on life interspersed with stories from your life.
Yes, it is. It is.
I would like you, something I looked for in the book, but I don't believe I saw. Can you tell us the experience of sitting in a theater and watching your mother perform for the first time?
Oh, wow. I never get asked questions like this. You know, I mean, they could do your Barbra Streisand impression. You know, I was always watching my mom perform, and I guess I learned everything from her. And I saw her, she was very beautiful. Her gowns, because she would do, parts were written for my mother. And by the way, Yentl and Barbra Streisand, they picked up the kind of thing that my mother was known for, which is she would get into a man's garb and play the little yeshiva bucher, you know, the little boy who's at the yeshiva studying the Torah because she wanted to be at the pulpit. It's a real women's lib thing before its time. So she had a masquerade as a boy to stand at the pulpit and daven and pray and sing the chants. And then in the middle of the story, as it was fashion for her, she was married and nobody knew. And in one of her shows, she's at the pulpit and she's singing and she's wearing the kapota, which is what the men wear with the tefillin and the, you know, the garb that they wear. And she goes into labor because she's pregnant. And that was a shining moment for her, playing the young man who's doing the chants and having the baby at the same time. And I think the upshot, the punchline was, stop everything. The Carson is giving birth, only in Yiddish, you know. The Carson geht zu Kind. It meant the cancer's giving birth, hold everything. The audience were, you know, it was blackout. It was just fantastic. It was a blackout after that. So that's the kind of stuff she did. And then, yeah.
Oh, go
and
ahead.
When Barbra did Yentl, I'd be hard pressed that she didn't check that stuff out. Although there are no films of my mother doing that, which is very, very upsetting to me. And yet there are a lot of films of my uncle, Moshe Osher, who was a movie star.
Not only was he a movie star, but he was really one of the great singers of the world.
Yeah, he was.
Tell us about your Uncle Moishe.
This is so emotional for me. I didn't know you were going to do this. So James, I'm going to get you for this. I was the soloist in my uncle's in the cantor. My father, Harold, was the choir leader. And Moshe was the cantor. And I did that while he was in the Catskills at a beautiful hotel called the Pines Hotel. And I was the soloist, not because it was nepotism, but because I could cut it, you know, I could do it. And I sang the duets with Moshe. And I am on an album, it's an iconic album called The Moshe Osher Hanukkah Party. And I'm singing on that. I'm 14 years old. And we're doing these, and it's just, it's overwhelming to me. And we do, the cut is called Most Sewer Rock of Ages. And I do that solo, and then the chorus, incredible chorus with my father. And we had the best singers in that particular choir. It was a thrill. But as I said, again, this is what we did. This was the gig.
But Moshe Osher, magnificent singer that he was, he must have taught you something about the art of singing. What did you learn from him?
Well, that passion. I mean, nobody, when I think of singers for American popular music, the first name that comes to mind for me, if I had to do that knee-jerk thing, it's Frank Sinatra. And if I think opera, and in the past 50 years, I would have to say Luciano Pavarotti, okay? And if you talk Jewish music, Moshe Osher. And that's how I see it, you know? And he was a great fan of mine. He recognized that at the age of 14 that I could do it, you know. So, but it was a great thrill, just to be on stage with him and to listen to him. It was a thrill, you know. It was goosebumps all the time.
Moshe Osher, aside from singing sacred music,
Yes,
in synagogues and such, he took it to Hollywood. He put it on records. He sang on the radio. So he was an ambassador for that music. And
yeah.
he popularized music that had been a kind of niche music. Okay.
Yeah, he had a incredible musical kind of jazz riffs that he used to do. And no, I mean, nobody did stuff like this, you know, these incredible jazz riffs, and you have to hear it to understand it. He wrote all the stuff. I mean, some of the cantors who sing now, and some of them have great voices, but they didn't have that charisma, that, you know, sex appeal, charisma, that's what stars are all about. And he had that, he just had that in spades. So he would infuse, whether it was a folk song or it was a classic Yiddish song or a theater song, he just put his stamp on it. It was just incredibly unique. I am very proud because on the album, the Oysher Heritage, um, I did, I sang with him the Serba. It was this very fast Russian impassioned, romantic number. And I told my parents that I was going to do harmony to it and sing together with Maisha, put the earphones on. And I know that's the one time my parents really, really said, you know, you're okay. I got the thumbs up for this. And this was before Natalie Cole sang with her father, with Nat King Cole on Unforgettable. You know, I was doing it on the Oysher, on the Serba, and it was my idea to do it. It was tough because I was doing it in Yiddish, and it goes by like wildfire. So you can get that through MarilynMichaels.com. I'll autograph it.
A number of members of your family, of course, had emigrated to the States from Russia. And I'm curious to ask you, did they ever talk about life in the old country?
Well, they spoke about life, and no, darling, no. I think I should say to my mother, Mom, don't you want to go to Europe and see everything? And, you know, she said, why do I want to go to Europe for? I was there already, you know? I saw everything. I don't want to go back. They did not want to go back. No way.
Marilyn, how did you discover your gift for impersonation?
I used to do them around the house. Just, I would hear, on the radio, Connie Francis, Teresa Brewer, put another nickel in the nickel. Sarah Vaughan, tonight, we are survivable. Well, I was like, you know, 13 years old, and I was doing these voices. I had not yet done a Judy Garland or any of this stuff, just the gals that I heard. I did Joe Stafford. What was it? Take me in your arms and let me go. Whispers in me softly. I know you're Joe Stafford fan. I would do, because I heard them. Then I had an audition for Roxy Rothafel, who was the owner operator of the Roxy Theater. He used kids. So I went and auditioned, and it was an audition hall where you were on a stage, and it was like a theater in the round. He was up there someplace, you know, and I sang, and he really liked it. And then I heard his voice, and he said, do you do impressions? I said, oh, how do you know? He must have asked James Gavin. He just had this feeling, you know, and he asked me, he said, would you do some for me? And I ended up doing about 3 or 4 impressions. And they offered me the job. But my parents didn't take it. They wanted me to continue with my schooling. They thought I was going to be I don't know, a nuclear physicist. No, never happened.
But then you made this interesting leap into the world of recording teenage songs in the late 1950s in the Connie Francis era. How did all of that happen?
How did that come about? That what?
how were you discovered as a singer of Connie
Okay.
teenage songs?
Okay. You know, like all my lives, you really did your homework. Somebody told me, I know you and I know how brilliant you are. And I read the book, but someone said, oh, he knows everything. I said, how much can you know? Everything. They told me that I had to be ready for this.
But yes, in
Um,
1957, I believe you made your debut 45 RPM record. Isn't that correct?
I was writing songs. I was writing rock and roll songs at home. I was just, writing these tunes, doo-wop tunes. And then when I was in music and art high school, I was 15. Yeah, 15. And I had this group of guys who were I said, you guys will be my backup singers. And they were, really talented guys, but they were bad. They were bad guys. They were like, they did some bad stuff, but who cared as long as they were talented. So, I mean, they'd come to my parents' house and they'd carve things on my mother's piano, they carved dirty things into the piano. But they went to NOLA Studios with me and they did backup on a song called Let It Rain. As soon as I had that demo, I actually pounded the pavements. I went to the Brill building and I just not literally, I knocked on doors. I had a lot of confidence, I mean, Moishe told me I was really good. I knew I was good. So I would knock on doors and they would let me in. And I say, I'm really talented and I have this CD, I have this demo. Won't you listen? And they did. And I got signed immediately to a record company called Debbie Records. Ray Rainwater, who was the brother of Marvin Rainwater. He was a country and Western guy. And they signed me. I started to record. And from there, somebody took me to audition at RCA. And they were looking for a girl to do the backup. No, not the backup, to do the answer song to the Ray Peterson hit, Tell Laura I Love Her. And I went in there and for Hugo and Luigi, the lion sleeps tonight in the jungle, the mighty jungle. And I sat at the piano and I played a song called Padre. And I sang that song and I played that song and I just got the contract like that. So, I mean, these are stories that, they're like showbiz lore stories, but that's exactly what happened. I was signed to RCA Victor at 17. It was a very good year.
Did it fill your head with fantasies of maybe becoming the new Connie Francis?
Yes, it did. Absolutely. Because she was a hot vocalist at that time, She did. And I admired her so much and I still do. And I don't know, I would hope that people know what she sounds like, that she's on this CD and then find her voice here. She's one of my best voices, actually, and not everybody's on here, Edie Gourmet didn't get on, Peggy Lee didn't get on, a lot of some great ones didn't make it on this particular cut.
But those singles did not go exactly where you had hoped they would.
I'm sorry, what?
The singles didn't go exactly where you hoped they would. And
well, no, yeah, you're right. Everybody wants that number one hit, or you want to be in the top this or the top that. But Tell Laura I Love Her, Tell Tommy I Miss Him was the answer song. And it did make the charts. It definitely did. And now it's part of the 60s compilations of answer songs, which is quite amazing. It was released in England. So, but that's not where I found my niche, not in recording, rock and roll, even though I I started to do club dates and nightclubs, and I did a few impressions, and then I would pick up a few more as I went along. And
What was
then
what was the first club, Marilyn? Do you remember?
the first nightclub,
Yeah.
the first nightclub was the Town and Country in Brooklyn. It was very famous, the Town and Country Club in Brooklyn, with Jackie Mason, the widow. Did this. I worked with Jackie Mason. I did that twice, the Town and Country. That was really exciting doing that. Oh, the gown that I wore, everything is just flooding back to me, you know, what I wore, how I performed. It was amazing. When I first started out, I only did about 12 to 15 minutes. I did the impressions. I did an opening song. Then I did the impressions. And I sang a song called Mamala, which is on the Oyster Heritage. And I sang it part in English and part in Yiddish. And I kind of became, you know, it was a real crowd pleaser. And when I started to travel, I sang that song wherever I went. I sang it in Reno, Nevada. I just sang it every place. And mothers are mothers wherever you go. They're all the same. They all cried at that song. The Southern mothers, the Black mothers, the Irish mothers, they're all, everybody was crying. It didn't matter what I did, darling. If I sang a mother song, they were on the aisles, that's it. So I kept it, you know. I kept it.
Who was your piano player?
Oh, I've had so many through the years. Barry Levitt, who is gone now, you know, Barry started this CD with me, Let There Be Night. And then he left. And a brilliant Mark Berman, who did the lion's share of the work with me, the arrangements and the orchestrations, and we worked very closely on that. He's just sensational. I mean, I have an idea and he's got it. He reads my mind, you know. So, yeah.
Marilyn, there's a fascinating story dating from about that time. And in our very first conversation, I asked you about this. You and your mother were performing together at a Hebrew Actors Union benefit.
Oh my God.
And there was a little Hasidic ditty that you sang with your mother. And in the audience, as you didn't know at the time, but I think I was the one to tell you that, were Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach.
Oh my.
Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach.
Mark, come here. I'm calling my son. I want him to hear this. He doesn't want to like edge in on this, but he's, yes.
Bach and Harnick were writing Fiddler on the Roof, and they were doing research. And they heard you and your mother singing this Yiddish song.
Right.
It became the inspiration for If I Were a Rich Man.
Yes. It was a song called Azemidal. And it was a little ditty called Lamed Alazing in Azemidal. Azemidal lechem is bride, basar v'dagim v'chol matamim. And we would sing in harmony. And then it would stop. And in the middle, my mother, Mama lechem is vos, and we would talk, and I'd ask her a question. And she'd say, well, lechem is such and such, and then this, we do this and that. And that's how and then we go, Lamed Alazing, and we go back to the chorus, and it went back and forth. And this is how they did it. That they got, if I were Richmond, and then he speaks to, but God, if I will do, they got it. But I didn't know that until you told me.
So it's always been interesting to me to see how you have navigated the path between or including singing and comedy, how you found a way to integrate your singing into your comedy. Did you ever want to choose one or above the other? Was it ever a conflict for you?
Well, I think initially it's like, oh, you know, I'm a singer and that's it. And I've got to do myself and be myself and be and be distinct and they'll know how really good I am. And then I came to the realization that there are people like Lena Horne and Peggy Lee who are originals. They are originals. Fanny Bryce, they're Judy Garland, an original. And then I came to understand that I am not that. I am an eclectic performer. And maybe within that parameter, I'm an original because I do all these different things. But if I had to go up and do 60 minutes of songs, and this is, I tip my hat to all my girlfriends who do it, and they do it magnificently. They do it brilliantly. All these gals, I mean, Julie Budd and Cameron Mason, and I mean, they go on and on. They do a fabulous job, and it takes a great focus to do it. If I had to do that, I would get bored doing it. I would want to do the comedy. The comedian in me would want to break out. Because a lot of what I do when I perform is I think off the top of my head. I'm doing a lot of improvisational stuff. And the audience they know it was made up on the spot. It's a trip. It really is. It's exciting. It's not a planned thing. When I did a show with Don Rickles, I worked with Don Rickles for many years. And his best friend was, I'm having the comedian, who had this series, and his name just eludes me at the moment. It'll come to me. And Bob Newhart. And he saw me do the show, and he said, I was singing, I was doing impressions. He said, Marilyn, he said, you started to talk, like after the third one, you started to talk to the audience. He said, this was great advice. He said, there are not a lot of singers who can do this, who can talk the way you can and just riff. He said, do it as soon as you can, right away, because you can do it. That was the best advice, because in doing that, it breaks the wall down immediately. That they were mine. We were friends right away, because I would just talk.
You mentioned Fanny Bryce. Fanny Bryce was a predecessor of yours in doing this combination of singing and comedy.
Yes.
And of course, you played Fanny Bryce for countless nights in the mid-1960s.
Yes, I
And
did.
You were selected by Julie Stein to do
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to do it. Because I felt, well, this is Barbra Streisand's role, and why am I going to do this? And I remember there was an agent, Lionel Larner, and Lionel spoke like this. He said, oh, are you crazy? You absolutely must. You have got to do this role. And did you know Lionel? He spoke like that.
He managed Dorothy Loudon.
Yes, he did. He said, oh, darling, actresses would die for this role. Actresses would die for this role. I didn't quite think of it this way, but he was right. And I auditioned for Julie Stein. He was very excited. And I saw Barbra, and I was watching her a few times. But when I did that audition, he ran up on stage, and he was very thrilled. And oh, you must do this role. It's a nice way to get a part, Julie Stein running up and telling you must do this role. So I said, well, okay, But then they were concerned because I had to do another audition. And the next audition I did was I had to read for Larry Kasha. may he rest in peace, who was our director. And I had to read some of the dramatic scenes. And we did that on the stage of the Winter Garden Theater, just the two of us. And that was it. Within a few weeks, we were opening in Texas. It was October of '65, and we were opening in Texas. We then played Verona. Da, 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 da. That was exciting.
Were you expected to more or less fill Barbra Streisand's shoes and basically reproduce the template that she had set for that part?
I don't think so. I mean, I needed to have those qualities that Barbra had to make that happen. I needed to have the vocal qualities, which at the age of 22, I had in spades. And it's not so bad today either. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, but so I had to have that. I had to have the comedy. I had to have all those qualities, all those characteristics, and the timing. You know, recently they were going to do a remake on Broadway. They were going to do Funny Girl again, and they had chosen somebody, the director, I don't remember his name, he's a big director. And they chose someone, and I said, this isn't going to be right. It's so important that the person who plays Fanny has to be, it's got to be real. You know, it's a New York person. She's a Jewish woman from the Lower East Side with that particular burlesque and all that whole thing. And the gal was completely, she was talented as can be, but she was just wrong. I mean, you would just, it just wasn't gonna, maybe Meryl Streep, if she could cut that score, would have been able to do it because of her genius at transforming herself into anything. I mean, she's a genius with dialects and voices. So I wrote about it. They asked me to write about it in the New York Times, and I did a few pieces on that. And they were, and Mark helped me with that because my son is a really very funny comedy writer who wrote the book with me. So it's loaded with funny lines, you know. But they did stop the production because I think they realized. How did I get on this?
You were imitating Barbra Streisand spot on on television and in your
I
cabaret
was,
act.
yes. Oh, I think that was part of the draw, but it went beyond that, you know. I mean, you can do an impression of Barbra Streisand, you still have to be able to sing, hit those notes, you know, to nail that score. Have to be able to do that.
And how did Barbra receive these impersonations? You met her, you knew her.
Yes. Oh, I met her at the time that I was in rehearsal for Funny Girl. And she was very interested to meet me. You know, she hadn't yet had a movie career, and she wanted us, you know. So we went to the Winter Garden. Larry Kasha took me to the Winter Garden, and we went backstage. A beautiful dressing room. Everything was just paisley, and it was gorgeous. And she came out, she was very sweet, and she was fascinated with me. I write about it in the book. There's a big chapter about that, how she was kind of, you know, and she had been listening to my, because I was recording the first album for ABC Paramount, Marilyn Michaels. I was doing it at the same time I was rehearsing for Funny Girl. How did I do that? Well, when you're 22, you do this. Now I think I'm getting a little sleepy here, darling. You know, I mean, how long is this going to go on for? No, I had that kind of energy. So she was asking me questions. I remember she told me, she said, you know, you're going to get a lot of presents. I said, what? She said, you're going to get presents. I said, oh yeah. She said, yeah, you know, people are going to give you presents. And then through the whole tour, I was waiting for people to give me presents. I only got presents from Ray Stark. There you go. I got this beautiful sweater, gorgeous sweater from Gump's in San Francisco. And that was my big present.
I think the year was 1965, and you had another big break. Wasn't that the year of your first run at the Copacabana?
I don't know. I think I should ask you, sweetheart. If I'm not sure about my life, I'll just call you at any time of the day or night.
You played the Copa quite a
I
bit.
did, yes.
What was it like at the Copa? Take us inside the Copa and describe how it felt to stand on that stage and what you saw.
Well, I was starring at the Copa in July. God, I'm starting to do my Elizabeth Taylor impression. I don't know why that happened. It's because of you, James. I was never fat. I was only bloated, James, very bloated. Anyway, I was starring at the Copa on July. They figured, well, it's July, it's summertime. Put this kid in because she's really good. But they were selling out. And they used to have, you know, like a Scorsese movie. They had 4 guys, hey, you know, or what? And they would come and they would take me, escort me to the stage. And they would, they would escort me, these 4 tall, tan, black hair with muscles. And who was going to bother me? Nobody. But it felt so good. It felt so good. I mean, my mother said, once you get on the stage, it's you and God. That's it. But getting onto the stage was so great. And then I did my hour on stage. But on Saturday, there were 3 shows. 3 shows at night. Hard work. My mother would say, what's the big deal? You know, in vaudeville, I played 5, 6 shows a day.
This was the beginning of the golden age of television, variety shows and talk shows. Not the beginning, but it was the white hot prime time. And you, with all your talents and your ability to put together a great 5 or 6 minute segment, you became ubiquitous on those shows for years and years.
I'm sorry, darling. I can hear that.
I said you were everywhere on those shows. You were on Mike and Merv and you were on Dinah and Carson, and I think in that fashion, America really got to know you and fall in love with you.
Yeah. I did a lot of those shows. I did the Jonathan Winters show. And here's the funny thing about the Jonathan Winters show is that they just had me up there singing. I wasn't doing impressions on Winters. And oh my God. And I said, oh, wow. They should only know that I do comedy because I would have loved to. He was my all-time idol, Jonathan Winters. So I would have been natural to do comedy. And they hired me as a singer.
Was it because at that time you were recording albums for ABC Paramount?
ABC. I did Stand Well Back, I'm Coming Through, Nothing Can Stop Me Now. That's what I did. And, you know, Kill 'Em. I did the Jackie Gleason show. That was one of the first shows. Oh, that was great. Oh, I'm starting to, Al Pacino. Oh, yeah. I did Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey, which is on the ABC. You're going to hold up the ABC Paramount record.
Well, I have the Warner Brothers album here, which I flashed before.
That's the Warner Brothers.
This is the album. You made a rock and roll album.
I did. That was ABC, and I did that. The Times They Are Changing, and it was in the 60s, and it was a lot of old songs. Oh, when I had a song that hit the charts called I Wonder Who's Kissing Him Now. And that was a charter. It really was. But my ability to do the comedy And to do the impressions, just it usurped, hello, everything, you know. And when I did with Sammy Davis, you know, Sammy was my mentor in a way, because I did so many shows with him, Hullabaloo, and then the Flip Wilson show. Sammy Davis, Flip Wilson, Sammy, Marilyn, and Ed Sullivan. Wow. When I look back on that, it really impresses me. It really does.
But also Dinah, and Dinah became one
And
of
then it was so wonderful to work with her, because we were just, I mean, it was fabulous. And I don't know, a lot of people, if they know what she sounded like, and she was so sweet, and just east is east and west is west, and the Roman I've chose. You know, it's funny because I was going out on some dates with Burt Reynolds. May he rest in peace. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. And it wasn't right for me. You know, actors, I wasn't for actors. You know, a lawyer's a Jewish doctor, you know. But after, when I stopped going out with him, that's when he started a relationship with Dinah Shore. And they used to say that there was a slight resemblance or something. So thought it was unusual. I did.
That's Bert staring at us now, isn't it? Over your left shoulder.
Where,
That
no,
Bert, figure out if it's Bert or no, down below
oh,
at eye level. Is that Bert or is it Sean Connery?
it's Sean Connery.
Oh,
Yeah, I wish we could back up here. And you're in my office here. And I have it lit to be able to do, you know, I said, Ben-Hur. I've got the ring light. I've got backlighting. Hello. I don't know if it's helping, but you have got to come here at some point. I'm a painter, and there's a lot of art, tremendous, all over the house. A lot of art and memorabilia.
Marilyn, what was Johnny Carson like off stage?
Oh, very quiet and completely uncommunicative. And I understand that, because your concentration is only on one thing, and that's going in front of the camera.
Mhm.
So he was never approachable. And then once you're on the camera, he was wonderful. He was wonderful.
Many people have asked you about another very interesting detail on your resume, and that is Zelig. So you had your dealings with Woody Allen.
Oh, oh, are we going to do that tonight, darling? Oh gosh, oh gosh. Well, I loved Woody. I still love his work. I think that he is a genius. I'm not pandering. I think he's just prolific, brilliant. And he wanted me to do a Mae West cameo in the movie Zelig. And they got me the original Mae West gown, her own gown. So I wore it. But my experience working with him was not that good. And then that didn't end up getting into the movie. And then he wanted me to do something else, and I didn't do it. I was disappointed working with him, you know. And so I'm not going to get into it more. I could, but I won't. but I think it's very difficult, but important for people to separate. Very difficult to separate the artist from the person, the flawed person, because we don't know what Rembrandt was like. We don't know what Mozart was like. What did they do? Who did they do? We don't know. And what if it's so horrible? Are you going to stop looking at the paintings? Are you going to stop listening to the operas? You know what I'm saying? You can't do it. You have to take the work for what it is.
Yes.
That's my feeling about that.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Mhm.
It, it makes me wonder, have you ever played a straight dramatic role with no comedy and no singing?
Yes, yes. And it was a thrilling experience for me. How do you ask all these great questions that no one is ever going to be able to come close to you, James? This is facial mist. Hello. What was the question? Yes, I did. I did a show called Catskills on Broadway, and oh, good heavens, I'm embarrassed that I forgot the name of this director. He was doing a big event for the Anne Frank Institute here in the city on Central Park West. And he asked me to be part of it. And it was just one of these star-studded events, occasions. And he gave me, we were going to read from a book about the Holocaust, letters from and of the Holocaust. So I figured, well, he's going to give me something a little more upbeat, you know? No. He gave me the most intense, frightening, horrible, horrendous stuff that, oh my God, it was just terrible. And I said, oh dear, dear, how am I going to do this? I took it home, and I remember at the time I asked for help, but I don't remember. My sister-in-law was acting then. She was studying. I said, she gave me some pointers, and I was trying to get a handle on how I was going to do this. Came into rehearsal the next morning, and everyone, Julie Harris was there. I mean, you know, I was sitting with Janie Powell, Julie Harris, Leslie Uggams, and it was just, and Linda Lavin, and some really very talented heavyweight people. They didn't expect, and I went up and I was doing the thing for the director, and he gave me one piece of direction. I don't remember what it is that he told me, but it just, that's why good directors are so important. It put everything into place for me. And I went up, and it was like, you know, when Lincoln did the Gettysburg Address and there was no applause because they were stunned. I did the two things, and they were just completely blown away. And I also did it in the voice of the character, which was like, it was a middle European voice of a lady who had that experience, you know. And it was heavy duty stuff. And I came back to sit with all these ladies. They were just, there were no words. And I got that. It had moved everybody. Thank you for asking me that question. You know, comics are not often given dramatic roles, but it was Woody Allen who said, comics are great actors. I thank Woody for knowing that. He might still come up with a role for me. You never know.
One of the remarkable things about your career all these decades has been its consistency. In 1991, after you...
Yeah, but I'm starting to wane now. So Magda didn't tell me how long this was going to be. How long are we going into Easter parade? I mean, oh my God.
Oh, I don't...
We have 5 more minutes, darling, and then.
But
no, I mean it.
But Cat, you were on Broadway for 9 months in Catskills on Broadway.
I did.
Was a Broadway debut decades after you had first embarked on this path. And
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, have you ever had what you would consider a slump in your career?
Did I ever have I'm trying to follow you. I can't
slump
see
in
everything.
your career.
I can't
A slump.
A slump?
Have you ever had, yeah, a dry patch in your career?
A slump. Oh, you mean like Mickey Mantle? Oh, he was having a slump. He didn't have a hit in 4 months. He's having a slump. I think a career is all about slumps. It's constant slumping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's slumping, it's slumping and slumping and plumping. Yeah, that's what it is. Actors simply do not know when the next job is coming or if it's coming. No. Oh, and then the phone rings and something happens, or here I am talking to James Gavin in a very intense and intimate way.
Well, I think to the right of my screen, some of our viewers have
Are there people there? Oh,
posed
let me put
some
my glasses on.
questions. Yes, there are.
Who is that?
Here's an interesting question from Bruce, who
Is
said,
anybody single? Never mind. Go ahead.
here's an interesting question from Bruce, who says, of all the musical people you impersonate, who was or were the most difficult to master?
Oh, huh. I think the most difficult to master are always the ones that I don't have yet. You know, I find that the people today, I just, you know, that very difficult to find voices. I mean, there's a lot of cookie cutter stuff out there. People who look alike and they sound alike and the distinctive characteristics. I mean, you know, I do Bette Midler because she's still so terrific to do. And, you know, distinct, the cadences. I don't find a lot of that now, you know. So that's hard to do. But I've kind of lost, I've lost interest in doing, you know, another impression. You know, I am in love with the iconic singers and the iconic film actresses. My most favorite people to do are Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe. I could loop for those characters. You want to tell them what loop is in case they don't know?
You tell, I don't quite know what loop is. Tell me.
I could
Tell
do
us.
the looping. You don't know what looping is? You know what looping is.
I don't think
I'm
so.
going to faint. Looping is when they do a film and somebody records the voice, somebody other than the person on screen records the sound. You know, like they did a movie of Elizabeth Taylor with that girl, I forgot her name, teenage star or something. And she talked like this, you know, you have to sound like her. It has to be right. Those voices must be right. The Marilyn Monroe, it has got to be right. You know, it's got to be right there. That's what looping is. There are certain artists that I could loop for. I mean, Renee Zellweger is a terrific talent. She's a terrific, versatile actress. But I just can't see that movie, and neither could Liza or Lorna, because she can't sing like Judy Garland, and she's not a singer. And that is kind of painful that they would do that. Because what that tells this generation is that Judy Garland was the greatest entertainer and the greatest singer. She was a great singer. So that is bothersome. But I could have looped that voice.
Bob Greenberg says,
where are you? Hi,
There.
sweetie. I can't see without my glasses, and with them I can't see either. Hi, sweetheart.
Bob asks, can you ask Marilyn about her TV show, The Copycat? She co-starred with Will Jordan, Rich Little, John Biner, Frank Gorshin, George Kirby, etc. It was a great show.
You want to know about that? Oh, that's what he wants to know? Oh, well, what is it that you want to know exactly, darling? I went into the, it done in England. And all these guys are masters, you know, and I was the only gal. I didn't do that many characters then. And they had a blackboard. And Rich Little had names. I had about 10 or 12 characters. And Rich had names, and they went around the block. Well, I realized that I was going to have to learn more characters quickly to get on camera, or I wouldn't get any camera time. I was in England, and All in the Family was the biggest thing. I had no idea what Edith Bunker sounded like. So everybody would come over to me and they'd say, "Oh, Archie." And they all did that. And somehow I picked it up. It was never as good as when I got back to the city and studied her.
You have been married 3 times.
Oh,
A son.
I'm going to go to sleep after. This is your last question. I know, I made it. I made it. Magda didn't tell me this was going on until.
2 more questions. 2 more questions.
What? How much more time are we doing here? My God. What?
5 minutes.
5 minutes more. Only 5 minutes more.
How
All right. What?
You've been so busy throughout your career, has it been hard to balance marriage, motherhood, and career?
Well, I think when I did Catskills on Broadway, Mark was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I became a mother late in life. I'm very late. So I was old. I said, "Is it happening now?" I didn't even know. So, well, when he was 8 years old, I wanted to be with him. He was so adorable. And he wasn't doing his homework, and the nannies, nobody can take the place of the mother. So it was very hard on days, matinee, Wednesdays and Saturdays. It was really hard. You do 2 shows, Saturdays, and then Sundays he would come to the theater, and with his father, that husband, the doctor at that time. And we'd have like family day at the theater, at the Sunday matinee at the Luntfontein Theater. And then we'd go to Howard Johnson's, and we had a lot of fun. We'd eat all the those little fried things, just many as you can eat. And it was fun. And, orange ices. That was wonderful. So what was the question? I'm really musing on this whole thing.
Just wondering.
It's hard.
Has it been a challenge
Yeah,
throughout?
it's absolutely.
Yes.
It's very difficult. I mean, anybody who says that it isn't, and it's still difficult. My son is 37. It's still difficult for me. It's really tough. I mean, I always needed a nanny. It's nannies, a full-time nanny.
Obviously, I could go on asking you dozens more questions, but
we can do another one. This is not the only one.
Probably.
But I knew that once you got me, I let go.
So just to bring things full circle, I'd like to ask you.
Oh, look, there's my.
By the 60s, when you had really made it, how did your mother, your father, your uncle, were they all proud of you? What did they say to you at that point?
Well, here's what it was, and I think this will really tell the tale. My mother was very proud of me. She was very critical also. If I pleased my mother, I mean, even if I got a bad review, and we all get them, it was like, it never could hurt as much as, your mother. Hello? I mean, my parents they knew their stuff. They were tough, really, really tough on me. It was never good enough. It had to be better, best, the greatest. But the thing about my mother is that people would come into the house and she'd open up the linen closet door, okay? And if she opened the door, and on the door, on the inside of the door, were all my clippings. There were clippings. Refuse wall-to-wall clipping. She said, "Oh, would you like a towel? Can I get you a pillowcase? Oh, here." Open the door. Oh, and they say, "Oh, wow, who's that?" Or my son. My son had his first day at Vassar It was his first day. He was at Vassar College, and he had some pictures, some family photos, and this was amazing to me. One of the gals walked into his room at Vassar, and they see this picture of me on the desk or something, in the dorm. He said, "Oh, how do you know Marilyn Michaels?" So, hey, wow. Oh, wow. You know Marilyn Michaels? How do you know her? He said, "Yeah, I know her. I know her kind of well." And I love those stories. I really love this story. Or my dad, and this one, my dad was very close with Robert Merrill, Richard Tucker, Jan Pierce. It was a group, Roberta Peters. They were a family of singers and cantors, And then I started to do national television, and I did the Ed Sullivan Show, sang Musetta's Waltz when I'm going up, that D above high C. Have you seen that? It's on YouTube, I think. And I'm up there doing Musetta's Waltz, and they all came over to my dad. And they said, "Oh my God, she did it, and she doesn't sing flat. She's..." Can you imagine how many coloratures were just on the side of that D? How many years they lived with that? So that was one of the great compliments. My father came home, he was beaming. I've enjoyed this. I love you. I love you, James. You know that I'm a virtual virgin and you're my first.
I would like to implore everyone watching tonight to, if they don't already have that wonderful album, Let There Be Night. It is such a rich showcase for you. It has wonderful comedy, wonderful singing, and wonderful acting all in one CD. Very
Thank you.
unusual song choices. Last night when we were young, riveting. The closing medley of 40 some odd impersonations had me laughing so hard. That's the little cherry on the cake. But I also want to implore everyone to pick up this delightful book. Here, let me make sure I have it in the frame properly.
Somebody said to me that it's an antidepressant that you don't have to take with water. You don't have to swallow it.
And these treasures and others can be gotten at marilynmichaels.com. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and in Amazon, on Amazon, CD Baby.
Better to do it to marilynmichaels.com because then the money goes straight to you, right?
It does, and it in turn goes to St. Jude's and Shriners Hospital for Children.
Oh,
those are my two favorites.
Marilyn,
thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you very much for giving us an hour and a half of your time and for sharing so much of your
an hour and a half, and I'm still breathing. Oh my God!
Can I just say thank you? This was like a dream come true to me to be able to put together an iconic entertainer like Marilyn Michaels and James Gavin, one of the great interviewers. And I'd like to introduce you to Foster, my other great interviewer, who will be interviewing Stephanie Powers next week.
Oh, she's delightful.
Yes.
I love you. Goodbye, Magda.
Love you. Thank you.
Bye, sweetheart.
Bye, Marilyn.
And this is our upcoming shows. We're gonna have Stephanie Powers, Stuart Lane, Bonnie Comley, Lee Grant, Piper Laurie, and April 6th, George Chakiris. So hope you all be with us. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you for asking. It was a joy.
Oh, thank you. And you're always the greatest.
Thank you, Magda.
Be well. Be well. Take care.
Bye now. So long.